So, you've built yet another Gundam plastic model kit to add to your ever more crowded shelf you bought at a yard sale for $5. Naturally, you're eager to get this thing posed because you're one of the 8,000 people that watched Badgunpla's posing video last month for some reason, and felt inspired to show off your creation to the internet. Well, creation is actually probably the wrong word. You were only following directions after all, and were too lazy to go out and buy some nail polish to give the thing a custom paint job as shown in that other Badgunpla video you should have watched, largely while scratching your head. Either way, you have a kit, and you want to show the world that you have a hobby, so you bust out your smartphone for a couple quick pics and get them up on the internet. But when you go to put them on your Twitstagram book, you can't help but shake the feeling that your plastic model looks like it was shot by the cinematographer of the Blair Witch Project. Lighting gets a bad rap. It's often looked at as an expensive and time-consuming task, which, to be fair, it usually is. But when you scale things down to the size of a Gundam, the kits, not the actual Gundams, of course, those things are like 70 feet tall, lighting gets cheaper and easier. Unless you make the mistake, of course, of going to an actual camera shop. A typical miniature lighting rig and light box can run you well over $100, even when shopping at reasonably priced photography websites. And although my distinguished YouTube career has afforded me the luxury of being able to purchase such an ostentatious lighting rig, I choose to use the same tools available to the common folks, such as yourselves, and it's those blue-collar sensibilities that bring me to the one-stop shop for everything a model builder needs to take an exquisite photo. Lighting Gunpla is all about finding lighting that fits the size of the model. And IKEA sells these. The Jansjo Flexible Desk Lamp. These things are spectacular for shooting models. They are very flexible, as mentioned, have a very, very heavy base so they don't fall over whilst bending them, and 3 of them will cost you a paltry $30. Why 3, you ask? Well, today we're talking about lighting, in case you forgot, and to get things started, I thought I'd share a bit of knowledge that I learned with my $40,000 filmmaking degree that I'm not using. That is the standard 3-point lighting system. A 3-point lighting system is the foundation of many lighting techniques. It's very simple to set up, and it's likely the same lighting setup that the photographer used when your mom made you get senior pictures of that studio that one year because she just has to have mementos of her baby boy or girl on every frickin' wall in the house. Your main light source is going to be called the key light. That's what we're going to use to shine on your subject. It's going to show brightest, and with all 3 of our lights for this demonstration being the same, will also be the closest to our kit. Then, there's the fill light, the most important light of the setup. The fill light is what gets rid of the shadows created by the key light. And using even just a fill light along with your camera's built-in flash can create significantly better results. Finally, there's the backlight, which separates your subject from the background in a much more natural way than just your flash on your smartphone's camera. Obviously, the lights themselves are important, but without knowing where to put them, the lights themselves won't do much of anything. Alright, so this is the 3-point lighting setup that we've been using throughout this video. If you're curious about the kit, this is the 1/100th scale Full Mechanics Barbatos Lupus. We'll talk a lot more about him in a future video, but right now, I just want to show off a little bit about what's actually going on with this lighting setup. Right now, we got our normal shot, and if I pull back, you'll start to notice 2 different cones of light. One in the center and then one over on the right-hand side of the shot there. The one that's dead center is obviously coming from our key light. It's a little dark in the shot, but you can see it a little bit there. The key light is what's primarily shining on the kit itself. The second cone of light over on the right-hand side, that is from the fill light, and what that's doing right now is mitigating as much of the shadow as humanly possible. Now, there is a very good reason why there's still shadows in the shots. No matter what lighting setup you have, there will be some minimal shadows unless you've got some really, really powerful lights. Like if this was an ideal situation, my fill light, for example, would be much brighter than my key light or my backlight, which you can't actually see right now with the key light. It doesn't seem like there's much there, obviously. If I take a look at the shot here back at the normal view, there is all the details still showing in the image. Now, if we turn off the fill light, you'll notice that those shadows all start to come back again. Obviously, we're trying to mitigate or completely eliminate, if at all possible, whatever shadows would normally be in the shot. So that's why we use that fill light. If we turn that back on again, everything starts to look nice and good. Now, with the backlight, that one's probably the most nebulous of them all, because you can't see the obvious difference. You're not seeing 3 cones of light, for example, in this shot. You're only seeing 2. But when we turn off the backlight there, you'll notice that the background gets significantly darker, which can actually be a good thing for a lot of different shots. But for this shot in particular, notice the details, especially in the darker areas of the kit. Those details are now completely gone. Those that's what we call in the industry crushing the blacks. The black levels inside of the image at this point are way too dark, and we don't see a lot of the detail in that gunmetal gray, especially in the waist area. You start to really lose that. So we're going to turn that light back on again, and you'll start to see that those details start to come right back again. Now, if you take a look here, the key light and the fill light are both relatively at the same level. A lot of times the fill light will be much higher, but in almost every case, the backlight is always going to be your highest light. If I pull way back here, see that pin of light at the very top of the screen? That is my backlight. That is forever away in this shot. It's really difficult to see, and really it's okay that you can't really see it, because it doesn't need to be that obvious in the shot. So that's what's going on with the 3-point lighting setup, and I believe that's going to make things make a lot more sense going forward in this video when we start playing with some more dramatic lighting setups.
Lighting, of course, is not limited to this setup either. Repositioning the lighting can cause a more dramatic effect by, for example, shifting the key light to the back of the subject. Or you can set the key and fill on either side of your subject to make it look more like a supervillain. Like many things, the key here is experimentation, so play with different angles and heights to get more unique looks. So, you've watched 5 minutes of a lighting video on YouTube and are now, by default, an expert on 3-point lighting. But there's more than one type of light, my dear friends. See, this is why I have the degree and you don't. These 3 lights are what we call spotlights, direct points of light that, while the brightest, create very harsh shadows. Often, even a good fill light placement can't completely mitigate them, and that is where diffusion comes from. Diffusion scatters light shining from the source, creating far softer shadows that are much easier to work with. There is a trade-off, however. Using diffusion will cause your subject to look more flat, and what I mean by that is it's going to look like it's losing some of its detail in things like edges and dark spots in the image. This can be minimized by adding diffusion only to your fill light and adjusting your key light to compensate for the flattening of your subject. Eventually, you're going to strike a balance between the two. God is in heaven, all is right with the world, unless you didn't listen to the beginning of this video and bought different lights than I had suggested. Because when you start mixing lights, things get complicated. There are 2 key factors when you start mixing different light sources. Those are temperature and lumens. The temperature of your lights doesn't necessarily convey how quickly it's going to light your backdrop on fire, but rather references the color of the light source. Lights with a low color temperature are warmer, such as candlelight. Lights with a higher color temperature are cooler in color, like the sun. Mixing color temperatures will make it more difficult for your kit to look as they would displayed on a shelf, but on the other hand, can make for some very cool lighting effects. For most of my older videos shot indoors, you may notice that some areas of my shots look warmer than others. That's obviously because I was using a warmer key light and a cooler fill light, which was an artistic choice and not because I only had 2 lights to work with at the time. It's important to remember that color temperature is not necessarily related to brightness, however. The brightness of a light source is measured in what we call lumens, or candle power if you're my old film school teacher that called it that before telling us what a lumen was. A lumen is supposed to be the same amount of light as one candle shining in all directions. Though considering the standard 60-watt bulb found in the lamp in your living room is often, but not always, close to 800 lumens, something tells me that 800 candles are gonna be way brighter than your one lamp in your one-bedroom apartment. Then again, I'm not an expert on optics, I just have a grotesquely overpriced filmmaking degree. Naturally, mixing brighter and dimmer lights can create different lighting effects, but be careful, because without patience and careful positioning, you could overexpose your images, causing harsh, bright splotches on your kits. If you have a desk lamp, you could take better pictures than you are right now. That's the entire point of this video. Even if you only have one, you can still bounce light off of a few white sheets of paper and use your one light source as a key and some sort of a fill. The point is that if you take your time and position a few things, you can take better shots, provided you don't ruin them by using a crappy, gimmicky camera app to take pictures of your Badgunpla. We'll talk about those next time.